Poison Study by Maria V. Snyder. Audiobook by Cinna. Chapter 10. Not expecting an answer, Valek swiveled back to his desk. Well, he had a point. I finished the cold food. When I set the tray aside to go to my room, Valek turned back to me.
What will you buy with the money?
A list rushed from my mouth, surprising even me. A hairbrush, nightclothes, and I'd spend some at the festival. I wanted nightclothes because I was tired of sleeping in my uniform. I didn't dare sleep in my undergarments for fear I'd have to run for my life in the middle of the night. And the annual fire festival was approaching. It was sort of an anniversary for me. It had been during the previous fire festival that I had killed Rayad. Although the commander outlawed all forms of public religion, he encouraged the festivals as a form of boosting morale. Only 2 annual festivals were permitted. I had been in the dungeon during the last ice festival, missing the indoor event where artists and craftsmen displayed their work. The ice festival was always held during the cold season, when there was nothing to do but huddle by the fire and make crafts. It was a local event with each town hosting its own festival. The fire festival was a massive carnival that traveled from town to town during the hot season. The festival began in the far north, where the warm weather lasted a few short weeks, and then wound its way south. Traditionally, additional performances and contests were scheduled for the week-long celebration at the castle in the middle of the hot season, and I was hoping I might be permitted to attend. Valek had indicated to me that he would be teaching me additional tasting techniques in the afternoons, but the rest of the time between meals had, so far, been mine. I had always loved going to the fire festival. Brazel had given the children in his orphanage a small allowance so we could go each year. It had been the most anticipated event at Brazel's manor house. We would practice all year to qualify for the various contests and save every penny possible for the entrance fee. Valek's practical voice interrupted my thoughts.
You can get some nightclothes from the seamstress, Yelena. She should have included them with your uniforms. As for the rest, you'll have to make do with what you can find.
Valek's words brought home the realities of my life, meaning fire festivals were not included. I might get the chance to see the festival, but I wouldn't be able to sample the spicy chicken steaks or taste the wine. Sighing, I picked up my journal and went into my room. A dry, warm breeze caressed my face. I cleaned the rest of the dust, but I only wiped away half of Margg's message. She had been right in a way. The noose did wait for me. A normal life was not in my future. Her message would serve as a reminder to me to not get too comfortable. I was either going to screw up and be replaced as the food taster, or I was going to foil an assassination attempt with my own death. I might not technically die from a broken neck, but the haunting image of an empty noose would always plague me. The next morning, I hovered outside Delana's workroom. She sat in a small patch of sunlight, humming and sewing. Her golden curls gleamed. Unwilling to disturb her, I turned to go.
Yelena?
She called. I stepped back into view.
My goodness, girl, just come in. You're always welcome.
Delana put her sewing down and patted the chair next to her. When I joined her in the sunlight, she exclaimed,
You're as thin as my finest thread. Sit. Let me get you something to eat.
My protests didn't stop her from bringing me a large slice of buttered bread.
My Rand sends me a steaming loaf of honey bread every morning.
Her light brown eyes glowed with affection. I knew she would stand over me until I took a bite. Not wanting to hurt her feelings, I suppressed my desire to taste the bread for poisons. Only when my mouth was full was she satisfied.
How can I help you?
She asked. Between bites, I asked about nightclothes.
My goodness, how could I have forgotten? You poor dear.
She bustled around the room, assembling quite a collection. Delana, I said to stop her. I only need a few things.
Why didn't you come sooner? Margg should have said something to me.
Delana was genuinely upset. Margg, I began, then quit. I wasn't sure how Delana felt about her.
Margg's a mean old grump, a spiteful hag, and an overgrown bully,
Delana declared. I blinked at her in surprise.
She instantly dislikes anyone new, and she's basically a plague on the rest of us.
But she was nice to you.
She hounded me for weeks after I first arrived. Then I snuck into her wardrobe and tightened all her skirts. It took her 2 weeks of physical discomfort to figure out what was happening.
Delana swooped down next to me, smiling.
Margg can't sew a stitch, so she had to tuck in her pride and ask for my help. Since then, she's treated me with respect.
Delana grabbed my hand in hers.
Unfortunately, you're her new target, but don't let her get to you. If Margg's nasty, be nasty right back. When she sees you're not easy prey, she'll lose interest.
I had trouble believing that this lovely woman was capable of such underhandedness, but her smile held a glimmer of mischief. She draped a pile of nightclothes over my arms and added an array of brightly colored ribbons.
For the festival, my dear,
she said, answering my quizzical look.
To augment your beautiful hair.
Have you found a fugitive for the exercise?
The commander asked Valek as soon as Valek arrived in his office for lunch. I was tasting the commander's food when Valek, once again, destroyed my tentative sense of well-being. Granted, I had been working as the official food taster for the last 10 days, but my stomach had finally stopped its painful contractions whenever I was near the commander.
Yes, I know the perfect person for the job.
Valek settled into the chair facing the commander.
Who?
Yelena.
What?
Having given up all pretense of minding my own business, my exclamation echoed the commander's.
Explain,
the commander ordered. Valek smiled at his reaction, as though he knew all along what the commander would say.
My people are trained to avoid capture. Assigning one of them wouldn't be fair for the search party. Therefore, we need a person not skilled in the art of evasion, but who is intelligent enough to bring some challenge to the exercise.
Valek stood to continue his lecture.
The fugitive needs an incentive for a good chase, yet must return to the castle. I can't use a real prisoner. None of the servants have any imagination. I briefly considered the medic, but she's needed here in case of emergencies. I was about to assign one of your soldiers when I thought of Yelena.
Valek gestured toward me.
She's smart.
He counted with his fingers to emphasize his words.
She'll have an incentive to perform well and an incentive to return.
Incentives?
A frown creased the commander's face.
The food taster receives no wages, but for this extra job and others like it in the future, she can be paid. The longer she evades capture, the higher the payment. As for the incentive to return, that should be obvious.
It was to me. The daily antidote to butterfly's dust kept me alive. If I didn't return to the castle by the next morning, they would be searching for a corpse. And if I refuse? I asked Valek.
I'll recruit one of the soldiers, but I'll be disappointed. I thought you would appreciate the challenge.
Maybe I don't.
Enough!
The commander's voice was curt.
It's preposterous, Valek.
That's the whole point. A soldier would make predictable moves. She's an unknown.
You might outguess our fugitive, but the people I've assigned to the exercise aren't that quick. I'm hoping to find someone who can be trained as your assistant. I understand what you're waiting for, but I don't believe it'll happen anytime soon. We need someone now.
The commander sighed.
Ugh.
It was the most emotion I'd witnessed from him.
Valek, why do you constantly undermine my orders to instruct an assistant?
Because so far I have disagreed with your choices. When the suitable candidate appears, then all efforts to train him will be fully endorsed.
The commander glanced at the tray in my hands. Taking the food, he ordered me to fetch some hot tea. A thinly disguised ruse to be rid of me while they argued. I was more than happy to oblige. On my way to the kitchen, I mulled over the possibility of playing fugitive for Valek. My first reaction had been negative. I didn't need any more problems. But as I contemplated the challenge of eluding searchers, combined with the chance to earn some money, the exercise started to look like an excellent opportunity. By the time I reached the kitchens, I hoped Valek would win. Especially since I would be outside the castle for a day, and any skills I learned from being a fugitive might prove useful in the future.
Something wrong with the lunch?
Rand asked, hurrying toward me, concern pulling the corners of his mouth tight. No, just need some hot tea. Relief softened his face. I wondered why he was so worried that lunch had been unsatisfactory. An image of a younger Rand rebelling against the commander by ruining food as a form of sabotage entered my mind. I dismissed the thought. Rand wouldn't serve inferior food. His ego centered on his edible creations. There must be something else between him and the commander. Uncertain that our new relationship would survive asking personal, perhaps sensitive questions, I held my tongue. I'd known Rand for almost 2 weeks now, but I still hadn't figured him out. His moods ran the gamut and changed without notice. Rand liked to talk. He dominated most conversations and asked only a few personal questions. I doubted he really heard my answers before he rambled on again.
While you're here, can you try this? Let me know what you think.
Rand said, pulling a white cake from one of the cooling racks that hung on the wall like shelves. He cut me a slice. Iced with whipped cream, the layers of vanilla cake were separated by a mixture of raspberries and cream. I tried to mask that my first bite tasted for poison. Good combination of flavors, I said.
It's not perfect, but I can't pinpoint the problem.
The cream is a little too sweet, I said, taking another bite. And the cake is slightly dry.
I'll try again. Will you come back tonight?
Why?
I need an expert opinion. It's my entry for the Fire Festival's baking contest. Are you going?
Oh, I'm not sure. When I had mentioned the festival the other night, Valek hadn't said that I couldn't go.
A bunch of us from the kitchen are going. You can come with us if you want.
Thanks. I'll let you know. On my way back to the commander's office, an unpleasant thought wove its way into my mind. I had been staying close to Valek because Brazel was still in the castle and wasn't slated to leave until after the festival. If I played fugitive, what would happen if Brazel found out? What if I accidentally encountered him at the festival? Coming to the conclusion that I was safer within the castle walls until Brazel left, I decided to decline both Valek's and Rand's offers. But by the time I delivered the tea to the commander, Valek had already won his argument. He quoted cash incentives to me before I could say a word. The sum for remaining free for an entire day was a large amount.
The exercise is scheduled to take place during the Fire Festival. A busy time for the soldiers. Should we postpone it until after?
Valek asked the commander.
No. The added commotion will increase the level of difficulty for our pursuers.
Well, Yelena, that gives you only a few days to prepare. Fair enough, since some prisoners plan an escape route while others see an opportunity and bolt. Are you interested in the challenge?
Valek asked. Yes. The words sprang from my gut, before the rational no in my mind could escape. On the condition that Brazel not be informed of my participation.
Isn't having a room in my personal suite an indication that I'm properly concerned with your well-being?
Valek's voice huffed. I realized that I had insulted him. When I had offended Rand, I quickly tried to make amends. With Valek, I tried to think of another comment to annoy him further, but I couldn't produce one that quick.
Speaking of Brazel,
the commander interrupted.
He gave me a gift. A new dessert that his chef invented. He thought I might like it.
Commander Ambrose showed us a wooden box full of thick, brown squares stacked on top of each other like tiles. They were smooth and shiny, but the edges looked as if they had been cut with a dull knife, ragged and shedding brown flakes. Valek picked up a piece and sniffed it.
I hope you didn't try any.
It's too blatant, even for Brazel, to be poisoned. But no, I didn't.
Valek handed the container to me.
Yelena, take some pieces out at random and taste them.
I sorted through the squares and selected 4. They were each about the size of my thumbnail, and all 4 fit on the palm of my hand. If I hadn't been told they were a dessert, I probably would have guessed they were pieces of brown candle wax. My fingernail left an impression on the top, and my fingertips felt slightly greasy after handling them. I hesitated. These were from Brazel, and I didn't remember his cook being especially inventive. I shrugged off my trepidation. I had no choice. Thinking wax, I anticipated tasting wax. I bit into the hard cube, expecting it to crumble between my teeth. It must have been the expression on my face that caused the commander to rise, because I didn't say a word. The sensations in my mouth had me enraptured. Instead of crumbling, the dessert melted, coating my tongue with a cascade of flavor. Sweet, bitter, nutty, and fruity tastes followed one another. Just when I thought I could say it was one, I would taste them all again. This was unlike anything I had ever encountered. Before I knew it, all 4 cubes were gone. I longed for more. Unbelievable. What is it? Valek and the commander exchanged puzzled looks. The commander said,
Brazel called it Criollo. Why? Is there poison in it?
No poisons, it's just... The proper words to describe it failed me. Try it, was all I could manage. I watched the commander's face as he bit into one of the squares. His eyes widened and his eyebrows arched in surprise. His tongue dashed along his lips and teeth as he tried to suck all the remaining flavor from them. He grabbed another piece.
It's sweet, different, but I don't taste anything unbelievable about it,
Valek said, wiping the brown flakes from his hands. It was my turn to exchange looks with the commander. Unlike Valek, he had an appetite for fine cuisine. He recognized excellence when he tasted it.
I'll bet that little rat won't last an hour,
Margg's muffled voice said through the kitchen door. I had been about to enter when I had heard her.
I'll give 50 to 1 to anyone stupid enough to think the rat'll last the day, and 100 to the one sucker who thinks she won't be caught.
After Margg called the odds, the room erupted with sounds of betting. I listened with growing horror. Margg couldn't be talking about me. Why would Valek tell Margg about the exercise? It'd be all over the castle by tomorrow. Brazel would find out.
I'll bet a month's wages that Yelena stays free all day.
Rand's voice boomed out. The rest of the kitchen staff grew quiet. My emotions seesawed from betrayal to pride. They were betting on me, and I couldn't believe Rand had bet a month's wages. He had more confidence in me than I did in myself. I tended to agree with Margg on this one. Margg's laughter echoed on the tiled walls.
You've been in the kitchen too long, Rand. The heat's cooked your brain to mush. I think you're starting to like the little rat. Better lock up your knives when she's here, or she may...
Alright, that's enough. Dinner's over. Everyone out of my kitchen.
I moved down the hallway and out of sight. Since I had promised Rand I would taste his cake, I looped back to the kitchen after everyone had gone. Rand was sitting at one of the tables, chopping nuts. There was a slice of his raspberry and cream cake on the table. He pushed the plate to me. I tasted it. Much better. The cake is incredibly moist. What's different? I asked.
I added pudding to the batter.
Rand was unusually quiet. He didn't mention the bedding. I wasn't going to ask. He finished chopping the nuts. After cleaning up, he said,
I better get some sleep. We're going to the festival tomorrow night. Are you coming?
Who's going? I stalled. I hated to miss out on the first night of the festival. Hated to let Brazel ruin the only fun I'd have. Although, if Margg was going as well, I'd stay with my original decision.
Porter, Sammy, Liza, and maybe Delana.
Rand's tired eyes lit up ever so slightly when he said Delana's name.
Why?
When are you leaving? Again, my heart was ready to overrule the logical and safe choice.
After dinner. It's the only time everyone is free. The commander always orders an easy meal for the first night of the festival so the kitchen staff can leave early. If you want to come, just meet us here tomorrow.
Rand headed to his rooms, which were adjacent to the kitchen, and I went back to Valek's suite. The dark apartment was empty. Locking the door, I groped around and found some flint. As I lit the lanterns, I passed by Valek's desk and noticed a paper lying on top. Glancing around to make sure Valek wasn't hiding in the shadows, I looked at the sheet. Names had been written on it, and then scratched out. My name had been circled. Underneath was the comment that I would make a perfect fugitive for the exercise. This was probably how Margg had known. I remembered seeing her reading papers in Valek's office before. Depending on how long these papers had been here, she could have known for a while. That woman was going to get me killed. If I survived long enough, I'd have to face her. Unfortunately, it would have to wait until after I played fugitive for Valek. As for my escape plan, I searched through Valek's piles of books. I remembered seeing some appropriate titles, and I was rewarded by finding 2 on the techniques of pursuit and 1 on the best ways to elude capture. Nobody said I couldn't do a little research. Borrowing Valek's texts, I took a lantern and retired to my room. I studied the books until my vision blurred with fatigue. Changing into my new nightclothes, I extinguished the lantern and collapsed into bed. I was jolted awake by the frightening awareness that someone was in my room. Instant, sweat-soaked fear gripped me. A black shape loomed over me. Yanked out of bed, I slammed into the wall. 1, 2, 3 gasps passed. Nothing more happened. The assault had stopped, but I remained pinned. My eyes adjusted to the dark. I recognized my attacker's face. Valek?